I bought a business for £2,500 and I'm going to show you in this video exactly how you can do the same thing. What I'm going to go over today, I'm going to give you a bit of background on me, how I got into this game, how I got into the world of business buying, and then I'm going to get straight into telling you how you can find a business, fund it, finalize that deal, get it over the line, and become that business owner. And I'm going to wrap it up with some rules and lessons to give you the best opportunity for doing this moving forward. So, a little on me and how I got into business buying. A number of years ago, I worked in corporate HR and I absolutely loved my job. By this stage, I had two kids. I was the youngest HR director under 30 in the UK. So, I was doing pretty well in my career and I really loved the place that I worked. I loved the people I worked with. And I just loved the industry that I was in general. However, I always had this background feeling that I wanted to be my own boss, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to build my own thing because I felt that I was building something for somebody else when I could be building it for myself, for my husband, for my kids. And I always had that feeling. And in the midst of all that, my husband was working for some large tech corporations and he was flying back and forth from Northern Ireland over to Great Britain quite regularly. And when our eldest daughter came along, he said, "Do you know what? I don't think I want to do this anymore. I think I want to be at home. I'm going to miss far too much." So he decided to go out and retrain as a plumbing and heating engineer. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, he launched his first business, our plumbing and heating company. And thankfully, it went from strength to strength. And it did really well over the COVID years. And during that point, we did a thing that no one really likes to talk about in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure about the rest of the UK and Ireland, but I know we really don't like to talk about it here. We made a bit of money together and we thought, what do we do with it? To me, it didn't make any sense why we would go down the property route because we had never done property before. Versus if we were to buy another business, treat it as an investment, we knew how to run a business, we knew how to own a business, we knew how to manage staff. That seemed much more sensible. Lo and behold, I bought my first business, which was a beauty salon in a really tiny town here in Northern Ireland. And getting that first deal across the line was such a buzz for me. I loved getting that deal done. I loved getting it across the line. And I thought, do you know what? I actually wouldn't mind a portfolio of small businesses just for myself. I think I'd like to do this a little bit more. And that's what I headed off to do. Ultimately, today, I am sitting here with a beauty salon, a barber shop, a plumbing and heating company, a physiotherapy clinic, a gym, an after schools club, and our business buying blueprint, our coaching program, where we show other people how to do the exact same thing and buy a business, whether that is to scale the business that they currently have, or potentially if they want to actually leave their full-time employment and become a business owner. So, enough about me. Let's get stuck into it. Let's chat about the background in the world of business buying as we are here and now. I've got some stats. They are based in Northern Ireland. But the thing that I will tell you about Northern Ireland is we're basically a little replica of the rest of the UK and Ireland. So take your numbers here and multiply them. And that's what you're going to see over in GB and in the Republic of Ireland. In March 2022, we had set over 70,000 small businesses here in Northern Ireland. But alongside that, we also have an aging population. The majority of businesses are actually owned by baby boomers, and those baby boomers are retiring. Their businesses have got to go somewhere, and their kids don't want to keep on those businesses anymore because Gen Zs want to work from a laptop in Bali, not run mum and dad's plumbing and heating business anymore. And whenever I think back to being a child, and love a little picture of me and my girls, but when I think back of being a child, it was always the business owners that had the nice lifestyle. They had essential businesses. They were boring businesses. They weren't anything fancy. They weren't going to be the next Elon Musk running Tesla, but they were businesses that employed local people, contributed real value to the local community, had profit margins that give them a really nice lifestyle, and they got to actually live life on their terms. Those are the businesses that we're looking at right now. Those are the businesses that are making up this 70,000 micro businesses in Northern Ireland. Those are the businesses that we are finding going up for sale right now. They're not like the rocket ships of startups. These businesses have consistent turnover, gross profit margins, net profit, month on month, a little bit of an increase, nothing too crazy, versus a startup that takes off and then tails off again. And you also have huge variation in startups because, as we know, 20% fail in year one, 60% fail inside year three. Day one, you're not making money versus whenever you buy a business, you're making money from day one. But also, you don't actually know if that business is going to be a success. You don't know if anyone actually wants the product or the service that you're going to create in that business. Versus when you buy a profitable, established business, you know the customers need and want it because you already have the customer base and you're making money from day one. So, if you're still interested, you are still thinking, do you know what? I want to become an entrepreneur and I think I could do this and I would like to do it by buying a business rather than starting a business, then I'm going to tell you how you can find a business for sale. Now, whether you're looking in Northern Ireland, whether you're looking in England, Scotland, Wales, or Ireland, it's pretty much the same format as to how you find a business for sale. You're going to see them listed on property sites. So for us here in Northern Ireland, you've got Property Pal, Property News. But people within our programme over in England, Scotland, Wales, and in the Republic of Ireland also see them on their equivalent property sites. You're also going to see them on the likes of business broker sites, whether that is a specific broker or that is the likes of businessesforsale.com. And also, you're going to see business owners put their businesses up for sale on their social media. Don't forget though, the majority of the time, whenever a business owner decides that they want to sell their business, there's three people that they tell. Number one, their partner or their spouse, because they will be having a conversation with them about why they want to sell or what they want to do with their life after they sell their business. And then they ring their accountant and their solicitor, because more often than not, they've never sold the business before and they've no idea how to do it. So never underestimate the power of networking, linking in with other accountants and solicitors, letting them know what exactly it is that you're looking for, what you want to buy, because more often than not, they're the first person that finds out that a business is actually up for sale. And then you will also find business buy and sell sites, general buy and sell sites on social media, the likes of Facebook. You will see businesses for sale on those sites all the time. But regardless of any of that, the best results that people inside our program have is through off-market sourcing. And that is deciding where you want your business to be located, what size of business you want to buy, what industry you want it to be in, and then actually going out and speaking to the business owners that own those businesses, getting in front of them, telling them that you're interested in buying their business and taking forward your deals in that way, because that is where we see the best success. Now, disclaimer. You would not marry the first person that you meet in life, so please do not expect to buy the first business that you come across. And the very infamous Cody Sanchez will often talk about the 150, 10 to 1 rule. You may look at 100 businesses online, whether that is on businessesforsale.com. You might request information on 50 of them, 10 of them you might view or you might do evaluation on. But guys, only one of those you're going to buy. So be prepared. You don't want to buy the first business that you come across. You want to buy the right business. And that's what's most important here. So, getting into why a seller actually sells. People say this to me all the time, but why would somebody want to sell a profitable business? And again, there are so many different reasons that we come across, and I have seen so many of these within the businesses that I have bought myself. I have had a business owner that wants to focus on another business that they have had, so they want to sell off one particular business. I have had another business owner who is taken unwell, and they know that they need to sell their business because they can't look after it anymore. I have had two business partners who are married get divorced and they are extracting themselves from the business. And I have had people that are relocating to a different country. Never have anyone tell you that there is something dodgy or skeptical or strange. People sell businesses all the time, and it is one of the leading ways that you can get into entrepreneurship is actually by buying somebody else's successful, profitable business. So, what exactly is it we're looking for when we're looking for a business for sale? I like to keep this really simple, a really clear-cut starting point for whenever you are searching for the first business that you want to buy. And if a business does not meet this threshold, I will not even walk over the threshold of my front door to go and have a look at it. So, it has to be over 5 years old. There have to be staff in place, and those staff need to be willing to remain within the business. That is everybody excluding the seller, of course, who's going to leave. And that business has to be profitable. If you've never owned a business before, or if you've never bought a business before, then do not buy what I would call a doer-upper, because you are going to buy yourself a problem. And there's also no need to when there are so many successful businesses out there for sale at the minute. Now, when it comes to valuing a business, there are so many different ways that you can value a business, and I've listed a few of them here. But the one that we're going to focus on, the most simple, straightforward one to do, is an earnings multiple valuation. Before I tell you a little bit about it, though, I'm going to tell you there's two different types of sales that you can do in a business acquisition, and that is an asset purchase and a share purchase. Within an asset purchase, the buyer is going to acquire selected assets and liabilities that that business owns. So, selected things from that business. For instance, you might decide that you want to keep on the staff. You might decide to buy the fixtures and fittings. You might decide to buy the customer book. Versus in a share purchase, you are taking on the company shares. So, you are taking on absolutely everything from that business. Few different things for you to think of. Obviously, within an asset purchase, there's a bit less risk because you are not acquiring all the liabilities, so nothing may be hidden within it. And you also have flexibility in what you want to buy. However, whenever you're not buying everything, that ultimately could end up disrupting the business, and you might have a bit of an issue if you are then moving forward trying to run that business in the same way. Versus if you're doing a share purchase, you know you have business continuity because you're essentially joining that business rather than the business becoming yours. There's also potentially a higher value. However, there is greater risk because you're inheriting liabilities and you're inheriting the tax history and any employment issues that have previously happened in that business. Now, from the seller's point of view, just to keep you in the loop, some things that they might be thinking of within an asset sale, they might have higher tax. That will obviously very much depend on the business that they're selling. It can be harder to transfer the goodwill of the business, of course, and it means they keep any unwanted liabilities, which they may not want to do. Versus in a share sale, they get a cleaner exit. They get to walk away completely from that business. It can be more tax efficient, but it can be harder on the negotiation end in terms of warranties and indemnities. I'm going to come on to those a little bit later. Now, back to actually how to value a business. Regardless of how you value a business, it's always going to start off with the business fundamentals, and that is the financial performance of the business. How much money does the business actually make? Is the business profitable? Is it doing good figures and numbers? And if you've never owned a business before, ran a business before, if you've never even known about financials before, the thing I want you to take away from this today is names like EBITDA, revenue, margins, things that you have never heard of before. You've maybe never even heard of assets and liabilities before. Do not let them put you off. They're fancy terms for items that you're just going to get to understand what they actually mean. So whenever we are looking at the financial performance of the business, we're going to look at, okay, what's the turnover? What are the expenses coming out of the business? What is the money left over at the end? The assets, the liabilities, and what is the potential growth within that business and the risks that come with it too. And ultimately, it's the deal structure that we're going to come up with that will determine how these are priced and transferred. Now, we talk about a thing called enterprise value, and enterprise value is a normalized EBITDA times by a market multiple. What does that actually mean? You are going to take the profit and loss off that business, and that's going to give you the net profit. So, what is the profit that this business actually made? And then you're going to transform that into a normalized EBITDA. So you are going to add back certain expenses that you will not have whenever you own that business. For instance, if the seller has a personal mobile phone through the business, or if they have a car through the business that you're no longer going to require, you're going to add back those things. But with it, you're also going to add back the items contained in EBITDA. So EBITDA stands for earnings before you pay interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. So you are going to add back any interest that the business has paid in their accounts, any tax they've paid in their accounts, any depreciation that's been put through, and any amortization that's been put through. And then you're going to times that by a market multiple. And what that means is a multiple that is being multiplied with the profit, and that gives you your enterprise value. More often than not in the UK and Ireland, a good average is an average of 3. That's what we more often than not see. However, you might decide to go slightly lower, you might decide to go higher, just depending on how that business is, what the business looks like in front of you. If it has really clean financials, you might go slightly higher. If it has a pre-existing team in the business, you might go slightly higher. If there is high staff turnover, you might go slightly lower. So there's so many different things that will go into actually choosing the multiple that you want to apply to this valuation. Remember, buyers will often prefer asset sales because they have a risk control. However, sellers are often going to prefer a share sale because it's going to give them that cleaner exit and potentially a higher valuation too. But this all depends on the deal that you construct with the seller. You want to negotiate with that seller to make sure that they're happy with the deal because they should be fairly paid for the business that they have spent their life building and working on. But also, you need to be happy that you're doing a good deal that you're going to be happy with moving forward when you own that business. So remember, an asset purchase is a value of the parts. A share purchase is a value of the entire thing. It will be the same business, however, depending on what different type of sale that you do, there is going to be a very different valuation outcome. And you're always assessing the financials, the risk, the tax, and what the exit goals in the business are. So moving on to funding it, how are you actually going to pay for this business whenever you get your deal constructed? Lots of different ways that you can pay for a business, whether that is using your personal savings, whether that is using seller finance, whether you are going to use asset financing or cash flow lending. There are so many different ways that you can do it. One of my personal favorites, however, is seller financing. And if you follow me on social media, you know I talk about seller finance a lot. And that's where the seller of the business essentially provides a loan to the buyer to cover part or all of the purchase price. So you may decide to give the seller a down payment of, say, 20%, and you give them that upfront on completion day. You might decide to give them that out of your own money, or you might decide to bring an investor on board, or you might decide to get a loan, whatever way you decide to give them that money. The remainder then can be paid out of the profit of that business until you have it paid off, or you might agree a set monthly repayment. Just depends. Now, why would somebody accept a seller finance deal? Again, people say this to me all the time. Why would somebody with a successful, profitable business want to sell their business using seller finance? And the reality is, there are not enough people out there buying businesses right now for sellers to always get cash up front for their business. And more often than not, sellers want the right person to take on that business. They don't want the first person that comes along to take it. So whenever you're offering somebody seller finance, not only are you giving them the ability to exit their business and retire, but you're also going to keep on that business, the staff, the customers, continue serving them, so their legacy still remains. Plus, they're also going to be confident that they're going to get paid because they know if that business has continually made that profit over the last number of years, why would it not continue to? Now, moving on to finalising your deal, you are going to do an awful lot of due diligence. And within the Business Buying Blueprint program, we do so much due diligence before we actually get to the stage of putting an offer in the business. And just to give you a little bit of idea on what some of that due diligence looks like, that could be, why is a seller selling? What is the reason for their sale? What's the reputation of the business? What do the reviews look like? What do customers say? What do old staff members say? And also, is that seller willing to stay on and support you within a transition plan? But if you're looking at the wider due diligence piece, there's an awful lot that is going to be done. So you always want to make sure that you have a really confident, competent legal and financial team behind you, a good solid solicitor and accountant who has done a business acquisition before, because that is going to be so, so important in this. However, there will be a certain element of this that you will look at doing yourself. So in terms of the operational end or including the to be of employees if they're moving from their previous employer to you, or remember, if you're doing a share sale, you're going to be moving to them, so to be won't apply. But there will be a certain element that you will need to do yourself. So for instance, looking into the business model, what is the customer base like? Whenever I acquired my beauty salon, one of the earliest mistakes that we did was thinking that we needed to bring in a new beauty treatment because it was quite a well-known treatment in the market. However, there was no need to bring it in because the clientele were an older clientele and they were not interested in that particular treatment. So you need to get a really good feel for your business and how it operates. Now, I said I was going to touch on what warranties and indemnities are. Again, fancy legal terms for something that is very straightforward. Warranties are formal promises that a seller makes about the business's condition, assets, and operation. And the whole point of these is to protect you from hidden risks or any misleading information. So, for example, you will get a warranty over the accuracy of the financial statements. And that means that if there is something wrong or if there is something that you were not aware of, you've got some legal recourse if the information turns out to be false. Indemnities, then, that is a contractual promise by the seller to compensate you for any losses or liabilities that arrive after the sale. And it's going to protect you from certain or unknown risks that could cost you money. So, for example, if there were tax liabilities from periods before the sale, those indemnities are going to promise to pay you for any liabilities that you're not aware of. Like, two people only apply, remember, if you are doing an asset sale and you decide to inherit the staff. It will not apply if you're doing a share sale because remember, in a share sale, you are buying the shares and you're joining that business. The employees aren't joining you. 2B applies whenever the employees are moving to the new owner and they inherit their existing terms. There's a few different rules and regulations about it, so it's really worthwhile doing a bit of a deep dive on it. Now, I'm going to wrap up and give you some of the rules and the lessons that I have learned over the past number of years doing business acquisitions. And my main one is don't fall in love with this business. You do not want to buy anything unprofitable. You don't want to buy anything that's asset heavy. So the likes of clothing retail or product retail, for instance. You don't want the seller to remain post a transition period because that's very hard for them to move from previous owner to now no longer being an owner, and it could cause a bit of an issue between you and the seller. You want to make sure that there's enough cash flow in that business to pay yourself. Otherwise, what is this all for? You want to make sure there's not decline in sales, the profitability remains the same, there's not too much competition, and just really consider if you want to bring a business partner into that deal. If you do, fine, completely up to you, but just have a really good think about it. Will someone else work as hard as you will on the business that you're buying? And my three main rules, remember, no startups. The business has to be profitable and all the staff have to be willing to remain because we are buying a business, not buying a job. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was useful. If you're someone that is interested in business acquisition, this is very much a whistle-stop tour to give you an overview as to how business acquisition actually looks out there. But as always, if you want any help, any guidance, or you are interested in the business buying blueprint, please reach out. I'd be happy to help.